Starting a supplement brand isn't cheap, with the majority of your cost being your inventory. A custom formula from a reputable manufacturer with typical minimum order quantities could easily put you into a healthy six-figure range. But there are ways to bring that inventory cost down, and today we're going to look at exactly 3 ways to do that. If this is your first time here, my name is Brian and it's great to meet you. I've been in the supplement industry for 2 decades and I've held executive level roles specializing in regulatory affairs and quality assurance. I've helped companies grow through compliance, and I want to help you do the same. So the first one is on-demand private label dropshipping. Think of companies like Rocktomic or Supplyful, which, by the way, you can find my videos on Rocktomic here. And if you want me to make a video about Supplyful, let me know in the comments down below. Here's how generally the on-demand model works. First of all, the manufacturer has already made bottles of a given formula. Let's say it's a stress relief formula, and it sits in the warehouse unlabeled, what we call bright stock. Your website would have your stress relief supplement on your product page, and when someone puts an order in, it triggers the warehouse to grab an unlabeled bottle, wrap your specific label on it, and put it in a shipping box, and they ship it out to your customer. Because the Supplyful or Rocktomic system is tied to your website, it will pull the appropriate fees for shipping and for the cost of the bottle or inventory at the time of sale. There may also be other fees associated with this service, such as a membership, but this is generally how the model works. So what are the advantages? The big one here is the low startup costs. You don't have to pay for inventory, or more specifically, carry that inventory anywhere, and you're only charged for that single bottle at the point of sale. It really does simplify the business model, and this is probably as hands-off as you can get for the most part from an operations standpoint. Sounds good, doesn't it? But there are some real drawbacks to consider. The biggest one being that you're operating solely at the mercy of another entity, and they're the ones that's controlling your inventory, your fulfillment. They have control over your formula. They are also controlling the testing, and you essentially have zero say on FDA compliance. You're at the mercy/hope that the other entity is actually doing everything right, that they'll always have inventory for you, that they'll never change the formula on you, and that they'll always be ready to deal with any compliance or quality issues that you may have. And of course, we're assuming they're testing the product correctly and have labeled the product correctly. And in my line of work, manufacturers make mistakes more often than you think. Even when they review labels, look, they're catching the easy, most egregious things, but they do miss a lot. And in the contract fine print, they know you're on the hook if there's ever an issue with a competitor, a lawyer, or FDA, and not the manufacturer. And from an operations reality, as orders increase, you might run out of inventory, right? As orders increase, you'll get more customer complaints, whether it's due to your product or not. And when you escalate these to your on-demand service provider, you're now waiting and hoping that they'll get back to you while your customers are expecting a response now. The other big disadvantage here is that you're at the mercy of trusting that your on-demand supplier is giving you exactly what you expect. They might be giving you the stress relief product that you wanted, or maybe it's something else. Remember, your product is not labeled at the warehouse, and sometimes bottles get mixed up. Like I said, the product is already made. It's sitting in a warehouse for who knows how long, and we're trusting this other entity that they're doing all the right things, that the claims are truthful, that they're shipping the right product out, and that the product is ultimately safe and effective. And as I alluded to earlier, the kicker here is that you, the brand owner, is on the hook if anything were to happen. FDA sees the brand owner as the manufacturer. And think about it, when there is a real problem, that's exactly when you must have direct line of sight to the manufacturer, to the testing, to whether the manufacturer is even investigating the situation, and more. As you communicate to your customers, you run the risk of not knowing what's really happening, or you will probably be keeping the customers in the dark. So clearly there are some advantages and disadvantages of the on-demand model, but if it still intrigues you, please see the link in the description down below for Supplyful. And yes, there are inherent risks in the on-demand model, as I alluded to earlier, but I know that Supplyful is doing things the right way, the best that they can. While an on-demand model is probably the most affordable way of starting a supplement brand, the next model up is the use of private label stock formulas. Here you're going to be buying stock formulas directly from the manufacturer. Some manufacturers make these to order, so it's only produced when you submit your purchase order, which I prefer. Other manufacturers pre-make these stock formulas and have these unlabeled bottles sitting in the warehouse. Now, one thing to watch out for is that there's gonna be some websites that you come across and it's not really clear if they're actually a manufacturer of these stock formulas or if they're a distributor or a broker with a very fancy website that makes them look like a manufacturer. Now, assuming you're working with a legit manufacturer, you now have direct line of sight and communication with them, which means that should a problem ever arise, you have access to the manufacturer's records of your products and to have the ability to discuss things with their QA department. The point here is that you're closer to your product, you're closer to the manufacturer. There's more transparency too, and you can always visit the manufacturer and check out how they're making things. Now, the disadvantage, of course, is that the cost will creep up, and this is more expensive than an on-demand model. And that's because to order stock formulas, there are either minimum order quantities or higher per unit costs, or a combination of both. The other disadvantage, much like the on-demand model, is that you have very limited say, if any, on how the product shall be tested, which may hamper or at minimum introduce additional risks if you were to sell on another platform like Amazon or another retailer. And remember, stock formulas are the property of the manufacturer, and they've created their internal test parameters that have aligned to their cost of goods and profit margins. And as a result, I've seen some pretty weak testing being done under the guise that it's technically allowed by FDA. Okay, I'm gonna rant a little bit here. Let me make this super clear. Just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's right or doesn't mean that you can defend yourself when challenged. Okay, rant over. So that's stock formulas. Let's move on to the third model. This is the most costly model, and that is finding a manufacturer with low-ish minimum order quantities. There are plenty of mediocre and poor manufacturers out there, many of which you'll probably find through Google search, by the way, so buyer beware. And of the decent manufacturers, minimum order quantities or MOQs, say for capsules, hover around the 5,000 unit range. Now, in some cases, there are decent manufacturers out there that can get down to 2,500 units, maybe 1,500 units, maybe 1,000 units. And this makes sense to you if you want a truly custom formula, maybe something unique and that differentiates you from your competition or from the other stock formulas available. You'll also have full line of sight with the manufacturer, the ability to dictate testing and get better control of your inventory. Now, the reality here is that the number of manufacturers that can offer such a low minimum order quantity is extremely limited. And the reason why they're offering smaller minimums is because they're perhaps a smaller operation, maybe their per unit costs are a bit higher, or maybe they just haven't been around long enough where they have yet to establish a strong reputation. And in some cases, their facility might not be as pretty compared to that of a more established manufacturer. That said, they are meeting the requirements of FDA. In other circumstances, there are some manufacturers that are pretty decent, have a great reputation, yet are open to lower minimums, but for the right customer. Now, in this whole video, I'm talking about costs in the context of inventory alone. There are a whole bunch of other costs associated with starting a supplement brand, of which you can watch the video here to learn more. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.